So this totally is not the video that I thought we'd be making about today, because heading over to TVA Sports, what I saw was an article with a very intriguing interview attached to it, and I thought this would be cool enough to share on the YouTube channel because it involves some very notable names from the 2022 NHL Entry Draft. Let's revisit the top of the draft and talk about how the Montreal Canadiens took Juraj Slafkovsky in the first overall spot and not Shane Wright, who had slipped all the way to number 4 only to be snagged up by Seattle. Now, I'm pretty sure y'all have been keeping up with all the stories because, look, we've been making a ton of videos about Juraj Slafkovsky. He has been so good with the Montreal Canadiens this season, especially as of late. He's been a point-per-game guy as of late, and he plays exactly like that. His puck retrievals, his offensive vision, his passing, on the first line, on the power play, it's been so good, he's been so pristine, and there is a lot of hype growing off on Slafkovsky's game. But when it comes to that Shane Wright, there's a pretty interesting conversation to have about him too, because he hasn't had the same success as Juraj Slafkovsky has had. Even in the AHL, his numbers are not as good as Slav's. He's got 32 points in 43 games played, yes, but his recent statistics, he has been somewhat under a point per game, only 2 points in his last 5. But either way, Wright's doing all right in the AHL. All things considered, he had a cup of coffee with the Kraken this season, played 3 games, had 0 points. But for the most part, the Kraken have had a very distinct player development idea for Wright, and it's been paying off. They don't want to rush this guy, they don't want to put him in a spot where he may need to adjust on the fly, they don't want to give him that hardship that the Montreal Canadiens may have bestowed upon Slafkovsky like last year, so you can understand it's a little different, but it's effective nonetheless. There is still growth here. But the reason we're making this video is because of this article on TVA Sports, which will be linked in the description. This was published by Nicholas Kluche from earlier today, and it talks about how Shane Wright said that Juraj Slafkovsky is where he wants to be. While Shane Wright is slowly but surely refining his game in the AHL, Slafkovsky has been playing with the aplomb of a top power forward in the NHL for about 20 games. A contrast all the more striking since, at a time not so long ago, Montrealers only had it in for Wright. The article then dives in and says that Shane Wright himself recognizes the success of the player that was drafted first overall in his draft class. That was the rank that he personally wanted. The rank to which he was predestined since the day the OHL granted him special permission to play at the age of 15, thereby granting him the status of an exceptional player. Wright said this: Slafkovsky is playing very well at the moment, he conceded during a video interview with TVA Sports. Over the last month, he has offered some very good hockey to Montreal. Obviously, Slafkovsky is where I want to be. I want to produce in the NHL. My time will come, I hope. I have to believe in the plan. And this is really great, you know, for Slafkovsky just to see the ups and downs, seeing the progression to where he's gone right now, and to see Shane Wright give the guy his props, it's a pretty good sign, you know? Like, we had been talking this entire time about how Slafkovsky going number 1 may have been a surprise. A lot of people thought that Shane Wright was the automatic lock. We remember how Shane Wright stared down the Montreal Canadiens table after the Kraken took him 4th overall. The fact that he didn't go first was pretty surprising. The fact that he didn't go 2nd or 3rd either was even more shocking, but it's understandable to see why from each of the Devils and the Coyotes' perspectives. But still, for Shane Wright to go out there and give props to Slafkovsky, it's a good showman of sportsmanship. It kind of tells a little bit more about the maturity that Wright has grown into. Not to say that he wasn't mature before, it's just, you could kind of tell there was a bit of an idea, like, oh yeah, Shane Wright plays like a first overall pick who knows he should be a first overall pick. This adversity may have kicked him into a gear that he probably wouldn't have been able to get into if he was taken first overall and handed the keys to the car in Montreal right away. That's not even to say that he wouldn't be good, like, he'd be fine, hopefully. It's just a different development path and a different timeline than what we expected. This article then goes out there and talks a little bit more about the progression of Wright. He has some comments himself in regards to how he's done in the AHL. They told me they wanted to spend time in Coachella Valley to get some quality minutes there and be a leader. I don't want to be rushed into the NHL, explained the Ontario Centre. I want to get to the NHL and stay in the NHL. I don't want to go back and forth. If that means more time in the AHL right now, that's fine. Which it is fine, because if he ever gets to a point where he's kind of teetering the line, he's an NHL guy, but then they're debating if they should send him back down, that's a really uncomfortable spot to be in, especially for a prospect who was touted to being an elite franchise talent for his entire life, pretty much. Like, you remember the discomfort earlier in November when everybody was saying that Slafkovsky should have gotten sent down. Like, that must have been a very difficult spot to be in, not only if you're Kent Hughes or if you're St. Louis, but if you're Slafkovsky yourself. Like, that's a tough spot for anybody to be placed into. Hey, you're willingly being talked about getting demoted, and not even just on the ice, but in terms of your bank account, in terms of your reputation, in terms of your status, like, that's all going down. So Shane Wright wants to be one and done. AHL guy for now. He'll get called up once in a while to fill in spots for injuries, but he's not going to be an established NHL forward until he's fully ready to commit. And that's great. No commitment issues here. Slafkovsky then goes even further to say that the COVID-19 season wherein the OHL didn't play, he doesn't want to look at that as an excuse because he wasn't the only player in that situation. So that's good that he's got that kind of perspective on it. He also talked about here that one of the points that they insisted he work on is his neutral zone play. They want me to keep the puck more often, to carry it through the neutral zone rather than just passing it to a teammate. I'm a good skater and they want me to exploit that, to have the confidence in my skills with the puck. And that's all fine and dandy. It's good to see, like, you know, the conversation about where exactly he is specifically growing his game, what areas he's making improvements on. But the article gets super spicy in the part that's labeled the microscope. Take a look at this few paragraphs over here. Shane Wright has faced adversity in recent years. With the label of exceptional player sticking to his skin, he saw his slightest flaws put under the microscope, both on and off the ice. A destabilizing ordeal for a young adult. His reaction in the stands at the Bell Center, upset and impatiently waiting to be drafted, gave him a certain reputation as a spoiled child. His glance towards the Canadiens' table was not better received. Wright, a competitor, had expressed before the draft that he wanted to be the first player selected and he felt he deserved it. I tried to direct my attention elsewhere. I focused on what was truly important to me, on the people I cherish, what people write about me online, what they should say, what I should be, where I should be, whatever. I have to block all that out. In the end, it's not important. This energy is negative and will not help me in any way. And that's at least good too, that Wright is acknowledging that all the social media commentary isn't really worth it. Like, you know, I say this all the time, but if Shane Wright, you're watching this video, why the hell are you watching this video? Like, this is not meant for you. This is meant for the fans that watch the sport that you play. These commentary videos are not really existing for the point of the players themselves to react and read them. It's just more so for the fans' perspective, right? So that's kind of where I get it. You know, Shane Wright, stop reading the comments. Just focus on your own thing. When it comes to the end, though, the article talks about how Shane Wright wants to be a player who is trusted in all situations and a player who produces offensively. Producing has always been a big part of his game. He wants to score big goals, he wants to be an attacking threat, and he wants to face the opponent's best players. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this is to continue to do what you love to do every day, to fall in love with the process. That's what keeps you going. And so at the end of the day, Shane Wright did a pretty good interview with TVA Sports, and I do commend him for putting himself in this spot where it's like, yeah, you're interviewing with TVA. This is a Montreal-based station. You're only really going to get a conversation from the perspective of Montrealers and Francophones. Like, this isn't the Seattle Kraken AHL social media team interviewing you for their Instagram page. Nah, this is like enemy territory in a way. So big ups to Wright for going out there and actually doing the interview, and also big ups to Wright for giving Slafkovsky props on the way his season has gone with the Canadiens. Of course, it's a big difference between Wright and Slafkovsky nowadays, but back on the 2022 draft date, we were hearing like, hey, it's neck and neck, we don't know who's going to go first, it could be either one. Montreal fans wanted Shane Wright, I'd say, mostly from the perspective of my comment section. Most of y'all wanted Wright because he was the projected first overall guy and Slafkovsky didn't really produce too much in the Finnish Liga. It was a pretty big discourse back in that time frame. So if you're a fan of the Montreal Canadiens or the Seattle Kraken, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Shane Wright calling out Juraj Slafkovsky thing, his comments about his progression, and where you think both of these players are going to go into the long-term future. I hope you enjoyed this Juraj Slafkovsky 99, and bye.